has beautiful questions, two beautiful passages, and I would love to read it. This one. So passage one goes, the idols of the cave are the idols of the individual man. For everyone has a cave of his own, which refracts, refracts, right? And discolors the light of nature, owing either to his own peculiar nature or to his education and conversation with others, or to the reading of books and the authority of those whom he admires, or to his mood when he first hears an idea, or to some other similar factor, so that the spirit of men is in fact variable and full of disturbance, and governed as it were by chance. Hence men look for knowledge in their own lesser worlds, and not in the greater or common world. And as I have prepared, like you said, Bacon, Francis Bacon, written by, and I think this is a particularly well-written passage, and I think the professors, whoever that was, picked a very good one, for sure. He talks about idols of cave, but I understand there's different idols too. I heard there's idols of tribe and so on and so forth.
Idols of the mind.
Idols of the mind, yes. Yeah. So this is I suppose this is I guess this is a passage from an important book,
Yeah, Francis Bacon. I don't remember the name. It's a Latin book, actually. So when you say it was written beautifully, this would have been translated from Latin.
Okay, so I guess translated beautifully.
Yeah, it was a Latin book originally. What was it, 16th century? 17th century? I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just heard that it's been almost 400 years since he passed. So
16.
So that makes it
21? I don't remember. I'm trying to remember now. You're testing me.
Well, anyway, I think for students, it'll be good to point out some of the key parts of this. Idols of the cave are the idols of individual man. So in this case, what does idol mean?
Yeah, it's a really strange choice of words, and I think maybe that is owing to it being translated from Latin.
Right.
But the general concept of it is that everyone is subject to his own necessarily subjective nature.
Right, and idols in this case could also be, in my mind, I guess, translated as one's viewpoint, one's perspective.
Yeah, and all those things that influence that.
Right.
Like he gives a nice list of them, right? Authority, the books you've read, your mood. We've all had situations in our daily life where you've thought one thing one day, and then under seemingly similar circumstances, thought a completely different thing, owing to what meal you ate or how much sleep you had or something like that. So we can all come in from a very sort of practical sense. We can all understand what he's saying.
Right. So through your education, your upbringing, your conversation with your parents and your friends and your teachers, and the books you read, and all these things, and also the people that you admire, I guess sets your perspective towards the world, how you're going to see the world, and when something happens, how you're going to interpret that.
Yeah, your bias, right?
Right. Oh, good. Yes, our bias. Now, the first question asks, how do you understand the phrase, men look for knowledge in their own lesser worlds? And why do you think the author regards this as a problem? Now, on top of my head, I could think of the fact that if you look at the world through your own ideals only, then you definitely are seeing the world in a rather limited point of sense.
And a nice sort of contemporary example of that would be, for example, in social media, where people click what they are interested in and click the things that they support. And then when you're on social media, it only shows you those things.
Right.
So you end up living in a world populated by your own ideas that you already believe, right?
Right.
So it's kind of a contemporary example of a similar idea.
Great example, because I've been a follower of some of the political bloggers, and after a while I realized that those were the only viewpoints that I was reading from, whenever I get online.
Yeah, you have your own little ecosystem, right?
Right. I
was going to say, but philosophically and in a wider sense, and what he's pointing to is that our whole experience is like that. It's filtered through our own senses and experiences and like biases. And that leads to the second part of the question, right? Why he thinks that's a problem.
Because it limits you.
Yeah.
But then again, isn't your own point of view also very important? Because time after time, people who make it big, big, huge, successful people are successful because they went their own ways, right? Against all odds and against all the better judgment of many men. So,
but I think in his original sense, thinking about it more sort of philosophically, he's posing to us, and this is actually seen in the other questions too. He's posing as an epistemological question, right? Epistemology being, the theory of what can we know? How do we know stuff?
Right.
How do we? How is knowledge created?
Right.
And he's saying that we're necessarily constrained in what we can know to this small bubble of our own experience,
right.
which we could metaphorically describe as a cave, right? And it reminded me immediately of like Plato's cave, right? Yeah, that same idea of you're in a dark cave and you only know this much, but you see flickers of shadows on the wall of other things. Maybe that's you, looking past your own biases or, whatever it is in this example.
One thing popped in my head was, I just taught a bunch of middle school students, and then we were talking about who discovered America. And we talked about how Columbus discovering America is a very Eurocentric idea, right? Because there were people before. And only if Europeans didn't clash out all the Indians, America might actually have a own origin story. Like Australians and New Zealanders and even Koreans, right? We have every continent has its own origin story, right? And likely so, I think American Indians would have had it, and that would have been the story. But then our education are solely focused on America was discovered by Columbus.
And this will be really applicable for question 2, right? When we're talking about the erasing of history.
Right. And number 2 here, also passage 1, number 2, what steps can one take to free oneself from the idols of the cave?
Well, if we just take it as a practical sense, a practical question, then I guess just broadening your education, trying to remove those kind of subconscious and unintentional biases would be one way of doing it. But in a philosophical sense, actually, in an epistemological sense, it seems we couldn't actually free ourselves from the idol of the cave. And it actually poses to us a deeper philosophical question of he made this theory from his own cave, right? So he sat in his own idol of the cave and made this theory. So
Okay.
do we even need to take that seriously, considering this is just his bias?
Right.
This is a very specific man with a very specific life. He was a, what was it, 16th century, was it a bishop or something? Some kind of religious leader.
Right.
That's a whole other world compared to what we live now, and will have its own set of sort of preconceived notions of how the world is. So, that maybe that undermines the whole theory from the start.
Okay. So here, what steps can one take, as simple as it sounds, keeping an open mind?
Yeah. Trying to bring in more viewpoints, maybe.
Right. But I guess there will be temptations among students, I think. And even as a teacher, I think, how would you phrase that? How can we phrase that better? Or is keeping an open mind good enough?
Yeah,
as an answer towards college interview?
Yeah. I mean, my instinct is always to go at these things way more philosophical than is probably required.
Right.
But I mean, maybe giving examples of how we may do that, the importance of having a wide range of competing opinions, maybe looking at some counterpoints to this argument. This is a very specific, a philosophically specific way of describing human knowledge, and it's not the only one. So maybe there are other things we could, some competing viewpoints we could bring into it to clarify our position.
Right. And always, I guess, qualify your own biases.
Yeah.
And I think that's a nicely phrased unintended biases that we have.
Yeah.
Right. We're just fed in, and I think it's good to be skeptical.
And also just maybe being explicit with our biases. Like we could say, it may well be impossible. In fact, it seems clear that it's impossible to be without any bias. So maybe the best thing we can do is be open about them, in this kind of modern world. Like, look, I believe this based on these things. And just being transparent and open about that may be the best we can do to mitigate this situation.
I guess keeping an open mind and be explicit about your own biases.
Yeah, being transparent, maybe. Being honest.
Okay. So philosophically, can we say, or in these kind of type of answers, can we say bias equals point of view or your belief? Can belief...
Maybe equals is a strong word, but is positively correlated with. Like is inescapably intertwined.
I'm resolute to do something, right? And does that also a bias? Does that count as?
I mean, maybe it would be necessarily biased, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on, because a lot of the stuff that we're going to discuss will overlap on passage 2, question 2 anyway.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so passage 2, from George Orwell, 1984. The party said that Oceania had never been in alliance with Eurasia. He, Winston Smith, knew that Oceania had been in alliance with Eurasia as short a time as 4 years ago. But where did that knowledge exist? Only in his own consciousness, which in any case must soon be annihilated, eradicated, right, removed. And if all others accepted the lie which the party imposed, if all records told the same tale, then the lie passed into history and became truth. Who controls the past, ran the party slogan, controls the future. Who controls the present, controls the past.
So scary.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
considering this, I guess, interview was given in 2016, and consider what went on during 2016, all the candlelight vigils and impeachment process that Koreans were going. I think this was when I looked at it, I thought this was a very brave move from a college too, right? To question students, and it's very on point with what's going on. And I think it's a good point now to let the students know that when they are preparing for something like this, they should be aware of what's going on in the world, in Korea, in the world. And I mean, I guess 2018, 2019, we're going to continue to talk about economy and state of the world in North Korea and these things. It's important.
Yeah, being able to call upon current examples is never going to look bad, right?
All right, so the question reads, the narrator claims that Winston knew that Oceania had been in alliance with Eurasia, but that this was based only on a conscious memory. Do you agree that Winston really knew the supposed fact? Explain your answer. What objection might a critic raise to your view, and how would you respond to this objection? So multiple parts in this question, but let's start with this. The narrator claims that the Winston knew. So did he really knew? If the entire country or your tribe, like Bacon says that never happened, but you know that indeed did happen, do you really know it?
Yeah, I mean, instinct tells us yes, right?
Right.
Our instinct tells us yes.
And think also how this passage ends. Who controls the past? Ran the party slogan, controls the future. Who controls the present, controls the past. I mean, this is a intense, strong statement to be made, right? And, because of these things, it makes it a little more, I guess, believable, credible that maybe Winston really knew. And also, I mean, I read the book too. So.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to say before that 1984 is never not going to be relevant, right? And this actually is the part that relates back to what you said before about Columbus discovering America. And then, that kind of, was it Julius Caesar, whoever wins writes history or something?
Right.
Was it? I can't remember what it was. But
and then there's also a guy, E.H. Carr, What is History? Good book to read, students.
Yeah, so this is really like a really insidious statement, right? Because it undermines what we generally know intuitively to be true. Based on our epistemological ideas on what is knowledge. We know that it's not just the sum total of what other people believe, right? There's some part of us that knows that there is some, I hate to use the word objective, but some knowledge that is independent of the opinions of the masses. Right. So yeah, it's a tough one. We want to say yes, but it's hard to philosophically justify.
And then it goes, do you agree that Winston really knew the supposed fact? Explain your answer. What objection might a critic raise to your view? So if we say that it seems as though Winston might have really known that that Oceania was indeed in alliance with Eurasia, right? Then if that's going to be our answer, what objections would you have to fight against?
Well, this comes down to your philosophical views on epistemology. What constitutes correct knowledge? Like Francis Bacon, this is like the Latin terms a priori and a posteriori. A priori, prior, right? The word prior is in there. It means before experience,
Right.
meaning we can deduce knowledge, and we can only deduce knowledge. So it's not based on what we actually experience. It's just based on our mind. We can just think true things, but that doesn't really get us very far. It basically restricts us to things that are tautologically true, like green is green. And 3 is 3 and things like that. You know,
Right.
it's not very useful. And then we have the opposite, which actually Francis Bacon was kind of in a way the father of modern empiricism in the sense that this was basing what we know, quote, know to be true on empiricism, sorry.
Yeah, right.
So
Experiencing.
only experience, a posteriori, like post-experience. Like we experience something and then we can say whether we know it or not. But
Right.
the problem with that is that it's very fallible.
Right.
We can never say something is 100% true. We can only say, in the 1 million times that I've seen this, 2 plus 2 is always 4.
Right.
But I can't say for sure. Maybe next time it'll be 5, but I'm pretty sure it's 4, like this. We
Right.
can never be totally certain about things. And so depending on which side, objectivism versus subjectivism, depending on which side you come on that, would
Right.
depend on how you would reply to this. If you were saying things were just empirically true.
In this case, though, Winston knew, and I think instead of using other words like he felt like or he remembers, it actually says or believes. George Orwell actually chose to say Winston knew, which is a very strong word once again, right?
It is, but then how did he know that he knew? Based only on his own experience, right?
Right.
Which is a very deeply sort of empirical statement. His own direct phenomenology of experience. Like nothing could be more empirical than that. I experienced this, therefore I know. And that's a weird connection actually, because Descartes had the evil demon argument, which was everything about your physical experience could be there to trick you. So he could think that he knows, but does he know?
We should say that again. So everything that exists is there to trick you, you said.
Yeah, that was another famous argument of Descartes. So he was the guy who said, I think, therefore I am.
Right.
He was the guy who said the caves argument, which was similar to this one.
Right.
And then it all comes around in a big circle because he was also the one who proposed the evil demon argument, which was a thought experiment designed to question the validity of empirical knowledge.
Right.
Everything you know might be a trick, an illusion. In modern parlance, a simulation, right?
Right.
Simulation theory. Everything might be just there to trick you, and it's not actually true. Some other truth, a deeper truth that you have no access to is actually true. So anyway, so it would depend how what you think is true, what you think knowledge is.
Right. So if, in this case, if the student believes more towards empiricism, because Winston knew and I guess
he experienced it.
He
right?
experienced it, right? We could say that he knows,
Yeah.
right? But then again, parties or the country or the governments in this case wouldn't justify that, right? And I think at this point, it'd be good to bring out what happened in many of the Korean history books, and this is something that continued on throughout the past 20, 30, 40 years, like the May 18th. The liberation movement, where a lot of people were killed by the government, once again, allegedly or true. Right? People in Gwangju feels that it really happened, whereas the government always had been in denial of it. And when the daughter, the President of Park, the recent one, before she was impeached, when she was signing the history books, it has been alleged that she had people or historians to elaborate what had happened towards so that her father wouldn't look as though too bad of a dictator, right? And in that case, people who were outside of that Gwangju city on that day may never know. And that actually happened for 20, 30 years. People believe that what happened on May 18th in Gwangju was an incident against more of his rebels, not what's supposed to be a civil, I guess, demonstration, and then it turned into brutal killing of people. So who controls the past? I mean, this is a strong statement, and definitely George Orwell, I think, sets it up for people to question: do we know? Is what we know what we really know? Right. Let's move on to question 3. The author of passage 2 seems to be suggesting that the only way Winston has to avoid the party's lie, however temporarily, is by relying on his own consciousness. In what ways does this thought contrast with that of passage 1? Is there one of these authors you more agree with? Explain your answer. So let's backtrack. Let's go back to passage 1. So passage 1 is hinting us to go beyond our biases, to leave or at least look outside of the cave. Is this accurate?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And whereas the passage 2 says, if you look outside of your own cave, there's too many lies. Can we link it that way? Or
Yeah, totally. That isn't how I originally looked at it. But
Okay.
I like that too, yeah. My original thought was passage 1 is telling us to look outside of the cave, but the deeper point might be that actually you'll never escape the cave, and everyone is necessarily in a cave, and
Right.
that's what it means to be human, to be in this cave of this mortal coil.
Right. That's very profound. I like that too. And then the passage 2?
And then passage 2 would be saying, actually, no, you can go inside and find out what is true by relying just on your own consciousness.
Beautiful answer.
That's how I like yours too, actually. I hadn't thought of it that way.
No, but I really like it. Now, but either way, right? It does. There are some obvious contrasts between passage 1 and passage 2.
Yeah, in both ways.
Yeah. Let's delve a little deeper about idols of the cave argument. When I was explaining these two passages to students, one of the examples that I used was the moon landing deniers.
Oh, yeah. Or the more recently, the Earth is flat guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, people say, we're 2018 now, and there are people who still believe that maybe the Earth is flat, or people still fight with the idea that maybe we never really, the Apollo, was it 13 or 11? They never really landed in the moon, and it was a elaborate movie directed by Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Or maybe he did. Who knows?
Right. But what I don't like about that is most of the people who denies that the moon landing was inaccurate or never, it's a hoax, it's a lie. They also falls into their own trap, and they blind themselves to look at, okay, maybe, because it's a lot more flexible to think and say that, okay, maybe the first try was a lie, or maybe that was an elaborate, I guess, movie. But the second or third or the fourth, we human have landed on the moon many times.
Kind of like Occam's razor, right?
Right, and I think if you see the world with that denial, right, you also sort of cancel out what happens after that.
And the mechanism by which and it's not just those people, right? This happens in everyday life, politics,
Right.
whatever. The mechanism by which we put ourselves in a cave is often confirmation bias. We look for the thing not that will disprove us, but that will prove us right. So we intentionally ignore what would actually free us from the cave, and we actively seek the thing that would keep us deeper in the cave. It seems like a strange paradox of the human condition, right?
Right.
I would definitely be throwing in words like sort of epistemology, objectivism, subjectivism.
Empiricism.
Yeah, empiricism would be a great one for Francis Bacon, because he's often quoted as being like one of the fathers of modern empiricism.
Right.
Rationalism, idealism, all these things that are theories of knowledge.
Right.
Yeah, for sure, a lot of those.
Do you think history has always been used to control people?
100%. 100%, yeah, I think so. Yeah, 1984 is such a poignant book because it's quite what it's saying hasn't happened explicitly, but those things happen, I think.
Right. And, even if you Google Big Brother, you're going to see tons of images that made relations to today's society, what's going on. The Big Brother's watching you. The Google's watching you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay. One point about answering strategy, I think it's important to note that these questions, I think they're written in a way to test if students are consistent with their answers. So if a student says, I am 100% with the idols of the cave, and then in question 3 answers the other way, then you are contradicting yourself. So I think it should be noted that students should be very careful to be consistent with their answers, right? Keep in mind how you answered the passage 1 questions and passage 2 questions, so that when it gets to passage 3, you wouldn't contradict yourselves. I think that's an important point here. Good. All right. So
I think before we wrap it up, there's
Right.
actually we missed a point, I think.
Okay.
Question one, the passage 1.
All right.
The last part, consider the implications for both the individual and society.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we talked about the individual, but I don't think we mentioned about how this would be relevant to wider society. If we take passage 1 to mean that we all have our own biases, and that we're all, in my opinion, necessarily choreographed by those biases,
Right.
then that would have quite a big impact on society, right? And how we choose to organize society with regards to political parties and political groups and belief and voting and things like that. That seems like that would be quite relevant. Something that they could talk about.
Okay. Good points. All right. Anything else we missed?
I think we got everything.
We got everything here, right? Good. All right. Well, I think that concludes this one. The passages are quite difficult, but I think once again they're very well written passages. Would a student fall asleep if a student attempts to read the actual Bacon?
Oh, it's impossible. The opening pages are all dedications to the king. Several pages of dedications to King, whoever it was. I forget the guy's name. Oh yeah, it's unbearable. But 1984, I would
a good book.
Required reading. Read it. Yeah, you really should.
And the
great.
movie's quite good too.
Yeah, the movie's terrifying, but the book is more so because it uses your own imagination.
Right, and you're going to link it to what's happening and what's possible today. I mean, think about what's possible today in regards to this book. I mean, my laptop's right there, and every laptop has a camera, and every laptop camera could be used to spy people.
Yeah.
Every mobile phones could be used to spy people.
Yeah,
right?
and it's very relevant in today's world of, yeah.
Every email could be read.
Yeah.
Right, and Googled. So, yeah, definitely.
Not going to sleep tonight.
Good. So,
I should read Bacon's work and I'll fall asleep immediately.
quickly recapping. So, Idols of the Cave deals with biases, right? And how you should either delve deeply within yourself to see the world and find the truth and light of nature, which is the truth. And when the light of nature comes in, you refract it in different ways that you see the world too. And that's one of the points here. And then passage 2 talks about how Idols of the Cave isn't the only refraction that surrounds you, I guess, right? You refract the truth of the nature within your own biases, but also the world, what the world information or the news that the world gives you isn't always true either.
I think for me, the crux of the first one will be that bias is necessarily part of the human experience. And how can we either mitigate that or deal with that in an honest way? That's what I get from that, especially the last sentence. And then in the second passage, this seems to be more along the lines of an epistemological question about how we come to know things and how can you trust your own, can you trust your own senses?
Right.
And how can you trust what is also coming in from the outside? That one's a little tougher, but yeah, that's kind of how I took those two.
And that's why it's important to be critical and be skeptical of things from time to
And
time.
also to have these discussions because you had opinions on it that I hadn't thought of, and
Right.
that then sort of colored my experience of these texts. So it's interesting.
And that's a good word, color,
Yeah.
right? Given that we talk about refractions. Good. All right. I think this, once again, will be a big help to the students. I was told that when these two passages were given, students had a very tough time dealing with them because I was told that these were a lot more difficult than the previous years. So, but get ready. The exam's only going to get more tougher, I guess.
Right.
All right. So, thank you and good luck, guys.
Yeah.
All right.